to invest in them. I think, are
We
you
fixed
back,
it.
Evan?
Yes, we fixed it. Jeffrey Woods does not get paid enough for his job. He knows too much.
I agree.
So
He'll want that in writing.
yes. Howdy and welcome to Your Why, Season 3, Episode 2. Today we have Tiffany Taylor on, one of the co-founders of Orphan Outreach, and we're super excited to talk to her. Today our co-host is L.M. Wilson. Hi, L.M.
Hello.
Do you want to kind of give us a little introduction to who you are and what you do?
Okay. I am the pastor of children's discipleship here at Chapelwood, and I've almost been here for 3 years. December 1st will be 3 years, and I get to hang out with super cool kids and care for families and partner with them and help in raising up a generation in faith.
That is so cool, and we're super excited to have you on because you also have some personal experience with Orphan Outreach, which we'll get into a little bit later and was a little bit talked about in the interview as well. So with all of our co-hosts, we like to ask an icebreaker question, and so I actually have a list of 187 icebreaker questions.
I'm nervous.
So I am going to ask you to give me a number, and we'll ask you that question.
Okay, 13 is my favorite number.
13. All right. Name 2 things you love to do. When was the last time you did them?
Okay, 2 things I love to do. I love to take naps.
Mm-hmm.
I took one on Sunday, a little one. And I love to do photography. And I did some photography on Saturday.
That's awesome. Awesome. Good stuff. So you're keeping up with what you like to do.
Yes.
Which is good.
Very important.
Yes. That's awesome. Okay. So, really we don't have much in the introduction here, but, kind of want to talk a little bit of so from the interview for me, I just thought it was really cool just to hear how intertwined Tiffany's story was with Orphan Outreach. And so I'm super excited for the listener to hear that. And so...
Yeah, it's a powerful story of, seeds planted in her life and God, directing her and her becoming who she is today, and caring for orphans being something woven into her story. And she's made such a huge impact along with Orphan Outreach.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's, again, so get ready for this interview. It's going to be good. A little hindsight for the listener about to jump in. Evan made a whoopsie before we went in, and I forgot to hit record the first time we did the Zoom meeting. And so the first part of the interview, we lost Tiffany's audio. So we went in and we re-recorded it right afterwards. So if you you might tell a difference between the first part of the interview and the second part of the video there. And before we jump into the interview, I'm actually super excited to announce we have our first official sponsorship of the podcast. For those watching on the video side, you can see us pointing at it. It's called Your Me Coffee. And so, Your Me Coffee is a specialty coffee with a purpose. The goal of Your Me is to partner growers and millers in Meru, Kenya with consumers around the world. Before You Are Me, supply chain limitations discouraged locals from cultivating their coffee. We've changed that by eliminating valueless transactions. The other key to You Are Me is ensuring that farmers and millers are compensated with a living wage. We like to think this is the fairest of trade. So they're really great. I have been drinking on their coffee today. Super great. It's giving me the energy to record the same interview twice. And so if you want to go buy your own, you go to YourMe, URME, coffee.com. They have 3 different options of what you can buy. So they have the K-Cups that you can get, which are a medium to light roast. And then you have the whole beans you can get, which is a medium to light roast. And then they have a limited edition, go get it while you can, coffee called HBS Barrel Aged Whole Bean Coffee. So it's barrel aged in bourbon barrels. It's super tasty. You can make a lot of great things if you are into cocktails and you like coffee cocktails. So great coffee to get for that. And so all of their coffee is grown in volcanic ash in Meru, Kenya. So They are roasting weekly now. You can, if you order now, you can expect your order to be shipped out within the week of the order. So go get yourself some, show them some love. They do a great job over there. All right. We are back with Tiffany Taylor. And, Tiffany, do you want to kind of introduce yourself to the audience? Let them know who you are, what you do, all that.
Yeah, I'm Tiffany Taylor Wines, and I am the Vice President of Development of Orphan Outreach. I'm also one of the co-founders. There were 6 of us who founded Orphan Outreach in 2007.
Okay, awesome. That is good stuff. And also, Ruby, can you just double check we're recording, right? Okay, good. I just want to make sure we're good on that end now. Okay, that's great, Tiffany. Thanks for coming on. And so we just kind of, if you'd want to give us a kind of an overview, 3,000-foot view of what Orphan Outreach is and what it does, that'd be great.
Sure, absolutely. I always like to start with just, we're talking about our why I'm involved with Orphan Outreach, and then I can talk a little bit about Orphan Outreach and exactly what we do.
Okay.
So my husband and I formed our family through adoption in 1996 and 1998. We adopted little babies from Russia. And it was through that journey that I learned about God's heart for the orphan and how important they were. And I started working in orphan care ministry in 1999. So in 1999, I started working with several of the people who we ended up forming Orphan Outreach with in 2007. So in 2007, we just started really feeling our hearts move, and each of us independently kind of came to each other and said, I feel like God is moving me in a new direction to a new ministry with a focus on orphans that takes the knowledge that we've learned and refocus it on the whole continuum of care of orphans, from helping children get adopted to figuring out the best placement for them, foster care, group homes, or residential orphanages. So we also had some really amazing supporters that said, we believe in you, we believe in this mission, and kind of on blind faith, we jumped off the ledge and started an orphan care ministry together. And so that's almost been 14 years ago. And in that time, we've just seen God bless it over and over again. So our idea was to have a ministry that would bring a focus on bringing Jesus and God the Father to these orphan children, but by providing them with just the holistic care that they needed to thrive and become wonderful Christians living out their lives in their communities.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think that's, you did a good job of covering the why and the how behind that. Like, y'all just saw this need in the world for orphan care and their need for, just to understand that there's a loving creator that's out there for them, right? And then you kind of, you can say, okay, we want to bring that to them. How do we do that? And then hearing how y'all, just decide to start this orphan outreach ministry and everything like that. So it's really cool. And then, LM, you've had your own experiences with them, and I know that you do a sponsor kit with them. Do you want to kind of give us a little insight on what that looks like?
I do. So I took my first orphan outreach trip a couple years ago, and then built a relationship with them, went to Christmas market, and saw that I could sponsor a child. And so took that leap and then fell in love with my sweet little girl. In January, I had the privilege and honor to go back on another trip and partner with Orphan Outreach, and got to meet my sweet little girl, which was a very emotional meeting. Meeting her and her family, being in her home, seeing where she is living. And so, yeah, for, several cups of coffee a month, you can sponsor a child and make a huge difference in their life. And so I'm honored to get to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Ellen, Em and I were just talking, Evan, just about her little girl whose name is Kati. Yeah. We talk about, we want to provide these kids the essentials of care. So educational support, spiritual support, emotional support, all to lead to the spiritual support, leading them to a relationship with God and with Jesus. And for Kati, she was a bright, great little girl, but she had cataracts. She literally could not see. So she was not going to thrive in school unless she had the physical taken care of. Being able to have this very simple surgery that any child would be able to have access to here in the United States, having that surgery so now she can thrive and do so great in school. Yeah. So it's just one example of how the sponsorship money makes such a difference for these kids.
Yeah. And that's so cool. And it's such an individual way to approach these kids, right? Like in that each one of their needs is very different. And I think that's so cool that y'all take that approach. And I think one story that I've been told in my meetings with you, Tiffany, and other people that are involved with the orphan outreach is a story about how y'all went in and y'all were helping build ovens and huts and all this stuff, and that people were cooking, but they didn't have the right ventilation, and so they were having lung problems, all this stuff, and y'all came in, helped build these ovens that had the right ventilation, all this stuff for them to cook. But then you realized that there was not that they were turning around and selling them because they wanted the money. Some of these people just wanted to get money so they can get what they wanted. And they didn't understand the importance, the health impacts that was having on them and all that other stuff. And so y'all then required a little bit of them to put down a little bit of a co-payment on it. And just so that they had that investment, that buy-in there, and they wouldn't turn around and do that. And I think it's like, Orphan Outreach does such a good job of just understanding those practical needs and understanding how to really partner with them. And so kind of transitioning into that, what does it look like practically on a very logistical level, what y'all do? We've talked a little bit about that here and there, but like on the grand scale, what is Orphan Outreach practically trying to do?
Well, we kind of concentrate on 4 P's. So it's providing holistic care, promoting family, preparing these children for independence, and protecting the rights of children. So the one that's easiest for us all to understand is the holistic care that I touched on. Educational, making sure these kids have access to education. Little Kati's parents, they can't read and write. So as she gets older, she needs a tutor to help her if she's got questions on her homework. She needs a printer to be able to print out her homework assignment. Just these simple things can allow Kati in a country where statistically girls do not have access to education greater than 3rd grade. I feel confident Kati's going to go on to higher education and make a huge impact on her own country. And then there's the physical care, things like surgery, but it's just as simple as food. As we know right now with COVID, food is an overwhelming need, and it's something that Chapelwood has been a huge part of, literally providing hundreds of thousands of meals this year. Chapelwood has in Guatemala through gifts made through the Chapelwood Foundation and Chapelwood Spring Thing Market these last couple of years. And then the emotional care, these kids stuck in these homes that it's hard for us to imagine. As LM and I were talking, Kati, dirt floor, we're talking tin roof, tin walls, maybe some cinder blocks here and there. And they were in lockdown in those situations. And so the children were in high anxiety, struggling with depression in ways that we can't even imagine, struggling in our own homes. And then, of course, the incidents of abuse have been on the rise. So we have a psychologist, and we have psychologists in all of our programs around the world. We're talking just about Guatemala right now, but we work in 8 countries. And those psychologists are working with these children and these families on these really deep issues. And all of this is for the spiritual, in order for us to introduce them to their Heavenly Father, in order for us to introduce them to Jesus so that they can have a relationship with Jesus. And then as they grow, they can be strong members of their community, living out their Christian faith.
So we're going to kind of jump in the second part. In the second part of the interview, we really like to talk about more of you personally and your story. The great thing is, and I think this is really cool, is that your story is so intertwined with Orphan Outreach and being one of those founding members that it was hard for us to talk about that first section without having to intertwine. So I guess just to start off, is there any part of like your story, like you kind of talked about how you realized this need for orphans and, your travels to Russia and adopting, and then, the story of how y'all started Orphan Outreach. But is there anything earlier in your life that you feel like kind of set you on that path that maybe you didn't talk about?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, too. I have to tell you, I grew up in the Methodist Church. And when we called it Method, MYF on Sunday nights. And when I was a freshman in high school, one of the moms said she really wanted to turn us on to missions. And she made it her mission to get us as youth to get into missions. And so we raised money to go and work in something called Mountaintop. It was a Tennessee Outreach Project in the Appalachian Mountains, where we would go and see impoverished people, as we discussed. Like here in the United States, there's lots of need, right? And we ended up doing that every summer. This woman, Mrs. Jolly, her name was Jolly, literally. And she just really opened my eyes to God just blessing us and the working and the doing missions as a youth. And I realize now that's why I really love leading mission teams. A big part of what we do at Orphan Outreach is taking people to see God's heart for the orphan and vulnerable. And I love taking teams that have youth. We've had definitely Chapelwood youth go with us. And when travel starts again, we're looking forward to having another trip to invite the Chapelwood youth to go with us. And I think actually exposing people at that age to missions is just so critical, because it's when they're forming their view on the world and seeing that they can make a difference. It's so easy for us to be like, wow, it's just overwhelming. The need is so overwhelming. But every one of us has the power to make a difference for something that they're passionate about.
Yeah, and that's so cool. And I think it's really cool because whenever I've had these conversations and we've had people on the podcast, I think there's always it wasn't yes, it was like this 180-degree moment in their life that they realized, oh, this is what I'm passionate about. But they always kind of oh, but there was this earlier in my life that kind of set me up on that path that at the time I didn't realize that that was going to bring me to this. And so I always think it's cool to have that introflexion of that. And so kind of what you were talking about, though, I kind of want to, I think now that would like to talk maybe some statistics that maybe, I don't know if you have, and we didn't really include this, so this is kind of throwing a little lob ball at you, but do you have any statistics that maybe you can give us about orphans and, just with the work that y'all do and the people that y'all are trying to help?
Of course. You did just spring this on me. So we'll do it the best of my memory as possible.
I won't be checking your numbers. Don't worry.
So statistically, the number that's normally thrown out is anywhere from 147 million orphans in the world to 153 million. But I want to caveat that with saying, when they talk about orphans, and when I say they, UNICEF is kind of the go-to for these numbers, they're talking about children that have lost one parent, that are now vulnerable because they are only reliant on the income of one parent. There's probably about 10 million double orphans, children that have lost the care of both parents. And I think it's also interesting to talk just a little deeper about orphans themselves. First of all, a lot of us, when we hear orphan, we picture little orphan Annie. When I mentioned collecting shoes, everyone would give us small pink shoes, because I think they thought in their mind also, all orphans are like little orphan Annie. When typically most of the orphans that we serve, actually their parents are alive. They haven't been orphaned as far as the parents dying. They're orphaned for political reasons, physical reasons, like they might have been separated because of an abusive situation. But quite honestly, mostly it's poverty. Families just feel like they cannot take care of the children. So that's why family preservation and promoting family is so important to us, that we don't want poverty to stand in the way of children being raised in their own culture. And of course, I talked about adoption and how important adoption was to my family, but statistics on adoption have gone down and down and down. It's very hard to adopt internationally now. Probably last year, there might have been 7,000 children adopted. So if you sit with that for a minute, 10 million orphans that are like true orphans, no family, there to take care of them, and maybe 7,000 were lucky enough to make it to the United States. So that gives you a very large number. And I want to talk about, for sure, on my first mission trip in 1999, is when I was with a bunch of people, and I have to tell you, as I said, I was raised in the Methodist church and I read the Bible, but I didn't realize how much the Bible had to say about orphans. And so we sat there at night and people would open their Bibles and they would be reading passages about widows and orphans and God setting the lonely in families and, God's heart in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And of course, James 1:27 is often quoted by orphan care groups, that pure and undefiled religion is helping widows and orphans in their need. So that is that woman who is without financial means and that child of hers, both of those together. And the Bible talks about them all throughout of it. And I was so blown away that this was something that was not only something I felt a calling to personally, but it was something biblical that had been set out that we all should care about.
Yeah. That's so neat. And, I just think it's so cool that, you're right. I mean, the Bible talks so much about it. And I think this is something that maybe we overlook a little bit of when it comes.
We definitely can't ignore it. And the numbers, we can't ignore them either. So definitely as Christians, we need to be doing our part.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard not to come to that conclusion whenever you take in all that information, right? And so kind of going forward, one last question I wanted to ask is, what does, moving forward, especially with COVID and stuff, a lot of people have had to rethink the way they do ministries, especially international missions and stuff like that. Maybe you can give us a little bit of insight of what Orphan Outreach is kind of seeing the future to look like in their ministry, and if there's anything y'all are looking to change or add or what going forward.
So in general, there has been a move throughout ministries looking deeper at short-term missions and how short-term missions goes back to books like Helping Without Hurting. How can you help without hurting the situation? And we have always tried to be very careful and intentional on our mission trips to make sure, just like what Ellen experienced, that she was coming alongside supporting a child who was in a program in her neighborhood that's run by Guatemalans. So when we weren't coming down there with a mission team, it did not stop the program. The program did not go away. The help was all there, and she was being built up by Christians in her community that she can know for the rest of her life. Her teachers, one of the main teachers there, Abner, is the worship leader at his church. He's an amazing singer. And so in their own communities, and this is replicated around the world, and I have been blown away by our staff. I will say that this year, the innovation that they have had to come up with to think through how they were going to deliver and serve families, and not just serve the families that we normally were going to serve. They have looked at how to multiply how they're serving the families. They have served more families than ever before because the need has been so overwhelming around the world. And so I've been humbled by that. And we know we may not be able to travel for a while still. And I have great confidence that these children's needs are being met. But I have to say, financially, we just need, we need support. And we're trying to pivot on our events. And we had an event coming up in Houston, but now it's going to be an online event. And we hope people still want to get excited and be part of that event, because these needs are overwhelming and we still need the support, because in these countries, the devastation of COVID, there is no food bank. In fact, in Guatemala, what they did when the COVID first hit, they literally took torn scraps of cloth they could find and put it on sticks. And if they were hungry, they put those sticks on their house, or they stood in the road trying to get food. And so our goal has been to, how can we make sure that we're being able to take down as many white flags as possible, so that these people are not literally starving to death in their homes because they don't have a food bank to go to. There's no social service office that's going to help them.
Okay. Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Tiffany. And thank you for being on. You've been a great guest. And I think you have, every question you've just knocked out of the park, and you've given us a lot of great content, a lot of things to go home and think about, which is awesome. And so kind of at the end of the interview, I always like to give the guest a chance, whatever you want to say, if you want to plug how people can give to Orphan Outreach, how they can get more involved, whatever lies upon your heart, the mic is all yours. Go ahead and tell the people what you want to tell them.
Well, I think I kind of was already doing that when I was talking about needs and the overwhelming needs. But obviously, just listening for anybody who listened to LM's story, we have more children that need sponsored in Guatemala. Sponsorship is $36 a month. If someone would be interested, I'm sure you'll have a link to our website. They can go and get information on sponsoring a child. We do have an online marketplace coming up. We're going to be selling goods that were made in Guatemala. And this is having a double impact. When we sell those goods, the support goes back to Guatemala, but also we've been employing artisans that do beautiful work all over Guatemala. We've been employing them this whole year, in a year where they were stuck in their homes, but they were stuck in their homes making these beautiful goods that people can sell. So hopefully you can link some information about that. December 3rd is our Houston online market. And then on our website, you can find out about that and also about sponsoring a child.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany. That is, it's great. And I encourage everyone to go out. And if you can, sponsor a kid and get more involved and everything like that. They're doing great things. But thanks for coming on, Tiffany.
Thanks. I'm just really glad I didn't have to do an ice bath.
Yes. I think a lot of people are glad whenever that doesn't have to happen to them, right?
When you said that to me, I was like, is he saying we're all going to do it? Oh, no, good. It's just him.
It was just me and Matt Russell. So, yes, no, it was good. All right. Well, thank you, Tiffany.
Bye, Tiffany.
And we're back to the outro. Man, what an interview that was. Tiffany was, she just did such a good job of explaining everything that, sometimes we have to kind of like poke and prod a little bit. And she just did a great job of like really encapsulating everything that orphan outreach is, what they do in a nice, precise way. And I really enjoyed that about her.
Yeah, I love her ability to tell a story and kind of bring us into the reasoning behind everything and make you feel like, yeah, I can be a part of this.
Yeah, no, it really is. And she just has a passion about what she's speaking about, right? This isn't just her reading off a script or this is her job. There's a legit passion there. And that was very clear to tell in the interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so really enjoyed that. And so now I kind of want to talk a little bit about your experience, LM. And we talked about your sponsor child a little bit, but yeah, kind of tell us like, how you got involved with orphan outreach and everything you've kind of done with them.
So I think it was about maybe 2 years ago, I went on my first orphan outreach trip with a bunch of women from the Memorial area, and including Tiffany and several women from Chapelwood, and got to experience all the partnerships that they have there in Guatemala. I was so impressed with how they work and partner and support the people of Guatemala, the kids of Guatemala, the ministries, how they are advocating. I was just so impressed with it. And it kind of inspired me to go back to Guatemala this past January, go to language school because I was kind of having a barrier problem. Yeah. And then I got to hang out with them and visit more of the ministries that they are partnering with and see the tremendous work that they are doing between their work with kids who have Down syndrome, to teaching technology to kids, to feeding kids, to meeting my sponsored child, to going to the dump and seeing how there are kids and adults digging through trash to make a living and provide for their family. So both trips were completely eye-opening and really just developed my love for Guatemala and my just great appreciation for orphan outreach.
Yeah. Wow. It's so cool. And I remember whenever you came back from Guatemala talking to you and you like seeing the pictures and all this other stuff. And you have a legit passion and like, you were showing me like, you were brought to tears whenever you saw your sponsor child. And I think that's so cool that like just that deep love that you have and like being able to go out there and actually see it with your own eyes too and be able to live that mission out.
Yeah. Yeah. It was powerful.
Yes. Did you want to show us your bag?
Orphan Outreach has been working on a market, and you can get your very own amazing tote. It's great for this season of needing to like Lysol and keep everything clean because you can just Lysol it down or wipe it down. Super cute, really practical, and they have tons of really great things. So make great Christmas items, great gifts, or just get something for yourself. And it's double the impact. So it's helping the women there who are making them, and it's making an impact, just in that community as well. So you should check out the market and get you a bag.
All right, that is great. Good to know. And then do you want to kind of follow us up with our call to action for the episode?
Yeah, so I challenge you, especially if you have kids, sponsor a child. As a family and make that investment. It will help your children grow. It'll help you. And it is an investing in a child and setting them up for success. So it's a win-win all the way around. But if you don't have children, just sponsor a child. I promise you, it's going to do good for your heart, and you're just investing in an eternity. And then check out Orphan Outreach's website and check out the market. There will be an online market for Houston, the Christmas market. And so you can order, it'll come in, and then I may be the person to deliver it to your house. So encourage you to support Orphan Outreach, their ministry, by shopping and by sponsoring a child.
Yeah, that's great. So, hey, that's the end of this episode, people. Like always, this podcast is it's a conversation, and it's not a conversation just between me and LM and Tiffany. It's a conversation between us and y'all as well. So we want to see that interaction. So go and make sure you're subscribed so you can hear more about it. Follow us on social media, on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, and all that stuff. Leave comments. We want to interact with y'all. We want to hear about your story and how you're finding your why and impacting this world. And so make sure you leave reviews as well anywhere that you listen to your podcast. That'd be great. And so, hey, go and find your why, people.